I was asked to make a piece of theatre for Brighton Festival, which is where I live in Brighton. A piece that would explore something about Shakespeare. And so I thought about this invitation and decided to look at the character of Caliban in The Tempest and to tell the story of The Tempest from Caliban's point of view. And thinking I would just make one piece of theatre, I called it I, Caliban. It was before I, Robot. It was before all those things. And it was great. He was a monster, an ugly monster, left on his own on an island. And then the next year, Brighton Festival said, did I want to do another one? And so I did I, Peas Blossom, which is the story of Midsummer Night's Dream told from Peas Blossom's point of view. Peas Blossom is a fairy. It's always good, I think, for middle-aged men to perform the character of a fairy. And then the next year, Banquo from Macbeth. I got a little bit more personal with Banquo because I had performed Macbeth in a theatre in the UK, and I'd always been interested in the idea of Macbeth's friendship with Banquo. He kills a king and he's fine, he kills his best friend and he starts to go crazy. And then there was a long gap where I just got on and did other things, work that I make for adult audiences. And then in 2010, eventually I did Malvolio, because I had played Malvolio as well in a production of Twelfth Night many years ago. So that felt like a good character to go back to and revisit. So yeah, it started because I was asked. It's always a good thing to ask people to do things, because sometimes they just need that little invitation and it sets their brain going in a good direction. You can't ignore Shakespeare. I think, well, of course you can. Of course you can ignore Shakespeare. There are billions of people who ignore Shakespeare in the world today, and that's really fine. You can happily ignore Shakespeare. But maybe for me it's very important that he stays present in our culture, and particularly he stays present in the lives of young people. Because to some degree he is a contradiction to contemporary culture. His plays are about language, are about performance, a very empty stage really. And at the moment theatre is becoming more and more squeezed into a corner, is under attack to some degree by digital media and by computers and TV and film. And so it feels very important that we shouldn't lose Shakespeare completely, and his values and his qualities. And also I think Shakespeare to some degree was the beginning of an idea of being human for us. He started to think about how we function as human beings outside of a religious position. And so his plays and his characters are still very important and still reflect how we feel about ourselves as human beings. So there are only certain characters in Shakespeare's plays, I think, that would fit this approach. And they need to be minor. I think they need to be minor, because Shakespeare wrote Hamlet about Hamlet, so it's interesting not to tell Hamlet's story because Shakespeare's already done that. So a character in a play who I feel his story or their story or her story has not been necessarily adequately communicated. Something is missing, they might have to say, they want something to say. It's difficult as well because they have to be a character that might know or understand the complexities of the whole play. It's important in each of these plays that I do also tell the story of the Shakespeare play. So Banquo, for example, in my play, he dies halfway through Macbeth, and that's handy for me because then he can talk to us from beyond the grave, and he can know things that a living character wouldn't know. Similarly, Peas Blossom is a fairy, and fairies kind of have a sense, they're everywhere in that play. And the same with Caliban in a way, he's a slightly magical character. And then Malvolio knows roughly what's going on in Twelfth Night because he's a steward, he's like a butler, so it's his job to know what's going on. And the things that he doesn't know become the engine of the story, of Malvolio's story in Twelfth Night. and a chance for him in I, Malvolio to explore that. So if I think about other characters in Shakespeare's plays, they would have to have those similar qualities. They couldn't just be a character who appears at the very beginning and then never appears again, because I wouldn't understand how they would be able to explore the full story of Shakespeare's play. I did another one of these plays on Cinna the Poet and Julius Caesar. Cinna the Poet has a very small scene in the middle of the play, a very important scene, where he's mistaken for somebody else and he's killed by the crowds. And I felt that so halfway through that he becomes dead. So towards the end of I, Cinna the Poet, he dies and he talks to us from his death, which helps me explain how he knows what's happening on the plains of Philippi or in the battlefields between Mark Antony and Brutus and Cassius, because Cinna is dead. And in the first half of that play, Cinna is very aware of what's happening in the society, and he talks from a very small person's position about the big political actions that are happening in his country. So that felt good. I don't have another character that I'm desperate to work on, and I'm also very busy with other things, but I hope one day it will come into my head that I want to make another piece like this. So I, Malvolio operates on lots of levels for me. On one level, it operates in the world of Shakespeare's play Twelfth Night, but it also operates on a level that I'm interested to explore as a theatre maker in all of my work, which is about the relationship of an audience to the performer, to the stage. And I suppose that's the most important thing. It's a contemporary obsession, it's my obsession, is to encourage an audience to think about why they're coming to the theatre, what they expect from the theatre, what they should expect from the theatre, and to explore an idea of liveness, of something that is alive. So I'm Malvolio, I'm very much involved in the audience. The audience is given a character in the play. The audience is asked to consider their responsibilities in the play. The audience help to kick me and try to kill me in the play. They also are encouraged to laugh in the play, but to laugh with cruelty at a character who is in a desperate position. So that's really the thing that I want people to take from Malvolio, is to think about why we take pleasure watching other people being abused. And it's explored in Twelfth Night, but not in the same way. You know, Malvolio is treated terribly in Twelfth Night, but there is no chance to really consider in that play the sort of the morals of how Malvolio is treated. So I want you in I, Malvolio, to think about the ethics and the morals of cruelty and laughter. Yes, I don't want it to be the only thing that theatre is. I don't want it to only be a pedagogical art form. Although I understand with these pieces, they were written to some degree to educate a young audience in stories and characters that they might not know about, that are important, I think, for them to know about. And theatre is a fantastic form of teaching in one way, in that it says, so why I like Malvolio particularly is it's a play for young people, but it's a play for young people that says to them, don't come to the theatre, never go to the theatre. This is terrible, this place is terrible, theatres are rubbish, nobody wants to go to the theatre, don't go to the theatre again. Which is a strange kind of pedagogy in a way, but I think a very good form of pedagogy, because it's how young people can be given authority in their own decisions. The guy said don't come to the theatre, but I actually really liked it today and I want to come again, even though he says I shouldn't. And then it's their decision and not some teacher who has said, listen kids, you have to know this, you have to enjoy this, this is really important, sit still, be quiet, don't move. That's not a good position for students or audience members to be put into. I didn't choose to focus on contemporary theatre. It's just what I do, really. it's very hard for me to do old-fashioned theatre or old theatre because I'm still alive. And it's important, I think, for any theatre to be contemporary, for any theatre to keep experimenting or exploring what it can do and how it can do what it does. So to explore with form as well as the stories that you tell, and that's something that I've always tried to do in the work for young audiences, in the work for older audiences. It's an opportunity in a rehearsal room or when you're writing in your head to push things further. And if that's a contemporary act, then I'm a contemporary theatre maker. But I would like to think that every playwright or every theatre maker forever has been a contemporary theatre maker for their time.